Do you feel like you took a wrong turn in life? Welcome to Morrow's Motivations, where we talk with people who educate, motivate, and captivate you with inspirational stories. Here's Dontrell.
All right. Thank you for joining us, friends out there listening today. I am excited to introduce you to my next guest. He is a person who has had an incredible story as far as being able to navigate his way through the academic world and overcome the challenges that we sometimes find in trying to get to a career through that route. But he did not let those challenges in any way slow him down or discourage him from doing what he does today, which he is a banker and a very successful one, if I might say so. And he will explain a little bit more about that himself. But without further ado, let me introduce Elijah Dresen. Hello, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dontrell. How are you?
Couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. Enjoying this nice fall day today and just wanting to thank you for giving us some of your time this weekend. I wanted to let everyone know that what you have been through and the things that you overcame and navigating through your professional life is very motivating and inspiring. And so I appreciate you being willing to give me some time to talk about that with you.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Thanks.
Well, to get started, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and about your background and how you got on your path to your current career.
So I guess a little bit about me. I've grown up in a cool household with my father, who was blind or had a degenerative disorder that was causing him to go blind. Mm-hmm. And what was great about that is I got to spend really all of my childhood watching a man not let something so potentially earth-shattering define him. And really watching him make a career for himself, watching companies say no and shoot him down, and then watching him rise up again anyway until he's found, real happiness. And then I have a mother who is stubborn as can be, but in the best way when it comes to adversity. She herself actually, to find out what career she wanted to do, took the military test to essentially decide what careers are best for you. Took that test and found out that the only thing that they told her she couldn't be was a scientist. So my mother went and got her degree in nuclear physics. And then proceeded to begin working for the Department of Homeland Security. So I always had those two great role models, of adults who refuse to let themselves be defined by what other people told them they could or couldn't do. Mm-hmm. So then, looking at that, I, being a 130-pound soaking wet, 5'11" kid, I say kid, even though I still weigh that and I'm 26. But anyway, being that way, I decided, I wanted to join the military. Not only that, I wanted to work in the special forces. My grandfather was an interrogator for the Green Berets. And I considered working in some sort of field like that. I didn't know for sure. Some sort of psychological operations likely was going to be for me. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, just because I'm not the kind of guy that you want in the front of anything important physically. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to pursue this opportunity to join the military. Granted, the opportunity wasn't there, but I was going to create one. And so I began studying political science, international policy, and linguistics. And I had the privilege to study about 5 different languages.
Wow.
Now they're just really expensive party tricks. And while I was in school, I met a beautiful girl. And as with so many of us, when we meet that special someone, all of our plans just go spiraling down the drain.
Just right out the window.
Exactly. Plans? What plans? Here's a really pretty girl. And that was it. That's all she wrote.
So, well, that's incredible. I'd say number one, like that you studied all of those languages, and even that alone is challenging. How are you able to do that? And what were the languages?
So I should be completely honest up front and say that I would not proclaim fluency in any of them. And by fluency, I mean that you could get me a job, at least a good job, doing them. That being said, I did study Spanish and French. I also studied Portuguese, which has utterly ruined my Spanish. And then I studied a Pacific Island language called Tongan. If you've ever seen Moana, the part when all the spirits of the ancestors are singing and all that, that is Tongan. And I'm just going to preface it now and say I have no idea what they're talking about. And then
Oh,
last of
dear.
all, I studied Mandarin Chinese for 2 years.
Wow.
And I'm still working on my English.
You know what? I think you should have added like impromptu comedian too, like in your general studies. I think
I would say that, but I'm still not getting paid for that either. Then again, I'm not getting paid for anything I've studied in school. So what's the difference?
And that's, you know what? That brings another important point. I think so. You went to do all of these things, and then you said you met this young lady, and then your life completely changed. So, in what ways did your path change from going towards the military to what it is? Like, what led you in that way? And I don't know, what challenges did you find in going to school and taking classes and those credits towards that to move to another career path?
So there were two really big things that kind of impacted that change. First and foremost was she had no desire for me to be in the military. I love my wife to death. She is strong. She's incredible. She's smart. She's funny.
Also, you got
All
married. I got you.
Well, exactly. Yeah. We've been married for 3.5 years. So we must like each other at least 3.5 years much. But, she was honest with me and said, hey, I am not the kind of woman that can wait for you. I get anxious. I get lonely. And, not that she was ever going to leave me for somebody else, but just she's like, if you've ever had a dog that gets really depressed when you're gone and real excited when you come home, I love my wife. And not to say that she's anything like a dog, but if I leave her alone, she's going to get really depressed. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted to do with the military, because the kind of things I wanted to do were, well, hopefully more clandestine, more spy novel-ish, more sexy. But at the same time, it meant that I wasn't going to be able to talk to her. I wasn't going to be able to be in touch. And I definitely wasn't going to be able to take her with me. So that was the big thing that said, okay, I've got to change what I want to do. Beyond that, she wanted to be a teacher, which meant I knew I was going to have to find a way to support her teaching habit and keep money coming into our house. But the second, big thing for us was that we got kicked out of school.
Oh, really?
The two of us stopped focusing on our studies. Granted, we maintained our grades, but the school we were at was one where it was against the rules to be with each other at late hours, among other things. And essentially, we both got disciplined, and they said, you know what, you two crazy lovebirds you're out for 1.5 years. And what that means is that you have to reapply. And in fact, they wanted to take away our semester worth of credits. We were able to fight to keep those. However, after that happened, I got a job opportunity in Indianapolis to work in accounts payable and receivable and do some business development, some sales, as well as some management and boots on the ground work. It was for a startup, which means you get to do a lot of things. You get some great experience with a startup. And generally, the pay is not amazing, but that's okay because it was a great learning experience. So we moved to Indianapolis, and I remember the day we arrived, we're crashing with my aunt and uncle, and we pulled in up in front of their home, and we said, man, this is amazing. And we looked at each other in the car, and I said, I don't really want to go back. Do you? And she looked at me and said, no, not really. And right there, before we even got out of the car to unpack our suitcases, we said, all right, then, we're not. And from then on, we knew we were done with that school. We were building a new life in Indianapolis.
And that's where you currently do reside now, right?
That is correct. So we now live here in Indianapolis. I'm finishing my associate's degree this December and pursuing, my bachelor's and my master's at Purdue University in accounting. And my wife is now at Purdue also. She's pursuing her she's pursuing her bachelor's, and she'll be pursuing her master's.
Boy, that's some good right there, like school pride and spirit. Purdue.
Yeah, absolutely wasn't a slip of the tongue. We just bleed black and gold now. We're Purdueing it. And it's been fantastic. We've gone from really starting up with that startup and her, working just whatever she could find to now she's working at a school as a teacher, and she's working towards administration and therapy. She has some great job opportunities that she's currently working with as of actually 2 days ago. And me, myself, now I work in private wealth. And I get to work with individuals who have way more money than I've ever had, which on the one hand can be really unrelatable. And on the other hand, I learned some great skills for when I'm like them someday. And beyond that, I've been able to find a passion for finance and accounting because I'm boring at heart. And
I doubt that seriously, just by the life story you've shared so far. It doesn't sound boring at all.
yeah, I kind of start to wonder sometimes, what am I going to do as an accountant? Because you can't tell a balance sheet jokes. And maybe I'll just be really surprising when I meet people.
Well, I think you'll find some clients that will appreciate that personality of yours and that inner comedian spirit you have, and I think they'll come back to you for that. So you'll probably make more people's day than you realize.
I hope it. They'll either come back or they will stay really far away. But, that's the story of my life, and I can live with that. I've got really great friends and really distant enemies.
I like that.
Thank
You want
you.
to keep the enemies like way far away.
Absolutely.
Just to take you back a little bit into your story. So here's what I see marked your big turning point. And here's the motivator, I think, for our listeners. So you were going to this school, you and your now wife, and because of, it sounds like a curfew, either violation or a curfew like standard that, the two lovebirds just got caught up in their love story and moment and was like, okay, forget that. So you were told you could not go back to the school for a time and you had to fight for your credits. And during that time, it sounds like you got married and then you went to the state of Indianapolis to go and be with your aunt and uncle.
That's correct.
And you went there, it sounds like for a short time, but then upon arriving, you said, well, we're doing this job. It sounds like maybe it could have been something temporary based. And then you said, well, I feel like doing this. What made you feel like to make that big change? What motivated that? Because that's hard to go from one thing you're studying for to almost losing everything and then saying, okay, we're going to do this temporary thing and it's a startup and hey, we're staying here.
Gosh, I think part of it was learning to pursue being happy in the moment. And that's a great lesson my wife has taught me. I live by my, my week, month, 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year plans. And she's so great at saying, that's awesome. But what's the point in having all these plans and building up to all this if we aren't happy along the way? Why do we have to wait to be happy until we're 65? This was a great moment of me trying to live that kind of creed with her and say, let's do it. Let's be happy right now. So we actually did, for a time, end up losing all those credits. Like you said, we did lose everything. I had to start my associates all over again because we found out the school we were attending was unaccredited.
Oh, wow.
So that was incredibly frustrating. But again, refusing to not be happy in the moment, we said, fine, then we'll just start over again here. We're not going to let that stop us. Now, there were plenty of times when we said, let's screw it. Maybe we just won't do school. But we never stopped. And we really kind of pushed each other along the way. And I guess to kind of fill in the gaps in between then and now. So I worked with the startup and I worked my butt off. And then I ended up getting a second job because I wanted to stay with the startup, but I just wasn't getting paid enough. And, ended up parting ways with that startup a little bit later and pursuing finance and getting into banking where I am now. It just kind of spiraled from there. All of a sudden, as I chose to be happy, I found that opportunities were really coming to me. And granted, yes, it took some work on my part. As far as key lessons that I learned go, number one was, and I hated when my father told me this, but knowing what I'm worth. It's like I used to shovel the driveway and my dad would be like, all right, how much was it? I don't know, Dad. I just shoveled and then you pay me. This is how this works. So you got to know what you're worth, son. And I'd roll my eyes and then probably undercharge him because I was scared to figure out how much I was worth. But I can say now that knowing what I was worth, knowing what I am worth is so important. Sometimes it's interviewing at another job and letting them tell me, but really finding value in what I do and being amazing at it.
That's a very good lesson.
Thank you. And secondly, really was learning that it's okay to be tired and not letting my fear define myself. It was really scary giving up on those credits. There's some debt backing those credits up, but I can say now that it's been worth it. In fact, as I've bulled through headlong through working 40 hours a week and going full-time to school, all of a sudden I've ended up on the back end in a job that I absolutely love and at a place of work where they're paying for my bachelor's and my master's now.
Wow.
And the associates cost us nothing. We've been able to, through some great federal programs, I won't lie, the government has absolutely helped with school, and through some scholarships because of some late night studying. But really by working hard, by getting used to being tired, we've been able to not only make this work for us, but really create what I hope is an awesome future for the two of us, where both of us get to pursue being happy in the moment for the rest of our lives. And honestly, I can say it cost me a couple hours of sleep most nights, but I wouldn't ask for them back.
Right. That's amazing.
Thank you.
I love that. And that invaluable lesson that your dad taught you about knowing what you're worth. I can honestly say I never really gave that thought myself until way after I had left high school. But having that in the household growing up would have been, I think, a very, very good eye opener for myself as well. One thing that stands out, it sounds like you said that self-worth and knowing your self-worth and having confidence in that is what helped you and your wife to really turn what would have been a real, disappointing tragedy as far as school credits went to
Absolutely.
saying, okay, but we can flip this and turn this around with some hard work and with some good optimism. Now that you're in the position that you are now, what went through your mind when you realized you were going to win, that you were accomplishing that goal you set for yourself?
What's funny is, like I said, I live by my goals, right? And I'm
Hmm.
always looking at that next one. My wife will tell you that I'm never satisfied when it comes to my accomplishments. I always look at the next thing. And she says it in kind of a way that maybe it's not the best, because I'm always disappointed in what I did wrong along the way to getting to where I am.
Hmm.
I don't know that it's really occurred to me yet that I am making it. It's through conversations with people like you and others when folks say, well, that's fantastic. You're doing it. That I realize, like, hey, maybe I am. That's fantastic. Because all I can look at is I'm happy. I do feel more secure now. And
Hmm.
I'm just building on. I've just got those next goals, that
Hmm.
next thing. As far as that moment goes, I think part of it, I'm gonna have to let you know when I get there. I'll let you know when I run out of 1, 5, and 10 year plans. And I figured that's when I'll be there.
Okay. Well, you know what, but you can see the difference. Like you can see, from where you started point A to now point B and the changes that came along the way. So, I mean, you're right. It is an everyday process because that mindset has to stay the same. But I think you're doing a lot better than sometimes it sounds like even see yourself, because there's a lot of people that would have just said, you know what? I can't believe it. I put all this work into this program that I was pursuing and into this part of my education, and then it's all taken away from me. Forget this. I don't need school. But you said, no, I'm going to recalculate my eternal GPS in my life, and I'm going to find opportunity where it resides, like first within my self worth, and then let other people see that. And now you're in a completely different career. And it sounds like you and your wife both find your inner passions and are thriving.
Absolutely. And I guess, to be fair, I did take a couple of years off from school in the middle there. I was really bitter.
Okay.
I mean, it is
Hmm.
kind of weird being the 25-year-old freshman at college for a while there, among
Hmm.
other things. It was strange being the oldest, but you make a good point. Definitely, there are things that I've been able to notice that have said, we're doing all right. I think one of the first big ones was being able to look at my savings account and see
Hmm.
enough money there
Hmm.
that if something were to go horrible at work, I could quit my job. And I know that as long as we were careful, for a whole month, we would be safe. And then for
Hmm.
3 months, and to be able to say, hey, it's okay. Like, our car can break down and we're going to make it. So that has been really exciting. And that's definitely helped improve the quality of my sleep.
I bet. That's amazing. I love that. And being a 25-year-old freshman, don't let the age number like deter you in any way or make you feel in any way inadequate for being able to pursue your education. You're never too old or too young to learn. So, I mean, I was a 28-year-old freshman when I decided to pursue my education. And you know what? I didn't let that bother me one bit. I was like, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do it. So,
I don't know how you do it, Dontrell. Every time I end up talking to you, I walk away inspired by you from
oh
some new thing. I'm starting to think that you're making this stuff up because you always have a
God.
perfect example for the situation.
No, I appreciate your kind words, but I know, like you said earlier, story of my life. That's the story of mine. I'm always like two steps behind, it feels like sometimes, but I'm like the race between the tortoise and the hare. I may be a little bit behind, but I will not stop until I get there. So,
Right.
now, one more question I wanted to ask you, because I think this pretty much sums up how we get through challenging times and how we are able to first look at ourselves, like you said, every day in the mirror and determine our self worth. is by knowing the answer to this question. And I'm excited to hear what your answer is to it. And I'm hoping that this will be a good insight for our audience. So how do you define success?
Wow, that's a great one. And I love that question because it's something that's evolved within me for such a long time. To be completely honest, and this is the blossoming accountant within me speaking, I think there is actually a certain financial figure, which is, based on our lifestyle and everything, and that's being able to be secure. But I think more importantly, and to go back to my original point, it's creating a life in which you are able to be happy in the moment as often as possible. And I know that sounds super cheesy, and it's the kind of thing that, you can't put it on your vision board and set a series of goals for yourself to accomplish it. But creating an environment where I've been able to be happy, where I can honestly say, I do not define myself by my fears. I do not define myself by the limitations that anyone else gives me. And I do not define myself by any sort of obstacle that's been put in front of me. And now I'm arriving at that point where I realize that now I'm becoming like, my mother and father, who also didn't let themselves be defined by what anyone else said, by any obstacle. And, I'm realizing that I'm finally hitting that point in my life, and that they were successful too. It didn't seem like it growing up at times, maybe, but I think that's what's taught me success is looking at myself and saying, I'm happy today. And I'm happy today in a life that I've created for myself.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. And you're absolutely right. I think being able to choose to be happy definitely is one of those things, and those like self-exploratory like things that we have to do for ourselves to determine that will lead to success, and helps us to really see it before we even recognize that it's even there. We just live it. And that's, thank you. Thank you. That's a great insight.
No problem. I wish I had a better answer.
No, I appreciate that answer, because it's true. And that's your answer. And I love that, because everyone defines success differently, but you can always see it too by the results. And every person who's ever made any kind of difference, whether it's just in their own life or in the community, always said that they had to find that own self-happiness and their self-worth to be able to do it, and to put the naysayers behind them. So good job for you figuring that out at such a young age as well.
Well, thanks. I sure appreciate it.
No problem.
I'm sure it'll change again.
We're constantly evolving, my friend. It's all good. So thank you so much, Elijah. I appreciate you giving us the time today to share your motivating story with us. And for all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. And till next time, please be safe and keep being motivated.
Thank you for listening to Tomorrow's Motivation. If you like this podcast, please tell a friend.
Wow, something is really different on the growler. Really different on the growler. Really different on the growler. Really different.